Welcome students, I'm Dr. Sonu Shiva, Associate Professor, Department of English, Government Dungur College, Bikaner. This session is for MA final year English literature students, and this is for those who have opted for new literatures in English as their optional paper, that's 8th A. In your new literatures paper, section 4th, you have V.S. Naipaul's A House for Mr. Biswas, and in this session we are going to talk about the writer himself and just an introduction and summary of his fiction A House for Mr. Biswas. This is V.S. Naipaul. I've highlighted the areas that are important for you to remember for examination purpose. V.S. Naipaul, and his full name is Sir Vidyadhar Suraj Prasad Naipaul, born on 17th, 1932, and he's from Trinidad, and he died August 11th, 2018 in London, England. He's of an Indian descent, and he's very much known for his pessimistic novels set in developing countries. And he has also won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2001. Now, his descendants were Hindu Indians, and they have immigrated to Trinidad as indentured servants. Naipaul left Trinidad to attend the University of Oxford in 1950 and subsequently settled in England. His earliest books are these. And his fourth novel, A House for Mr. Biswas, is his fourth novel, which was somewhere in 1961. It is also set in Trinidad, and this is much important work and won for him major recognition. So he's quite renowned for this fiction of his. The attempt that he makes in this fiction is to assert his personal identity and establish his independence as symbolized by owning his own house. So the whole fiction is about his struggle to have a house for his own. Naipaul's subsequent novels use other national settings but continue to explore the personal and collective alienation experience. Well, personal and collective alienation. In my earlier presentation, when we did talk about the themes that you're going to encounter when you are dealing with this new literatures paper, this is the major theme that you find in the fiction. The alienation experienced in new nations that were struggling to integrate their native and Western colonial heritages. So these fictions, they do talk about the diaspora, they talk about the experience of the people who are in a new nation and how they are struggling to somehow merge their native and their colonial heritages. Then he has the three stories which won him Booker Prize and which are set in other countries. Then here you have the details of his other novels. So these are the things that you must remember about V.S. Naipaul as a writer. Let's look at the summary of A House for Mr. Biswas. So we know that's a fourth novel, and that was a success. So it gained acclaim as 72 number on Modern Library list of 100 best English language novels of the 20th century. So it had its place, an important place among the best English language novels. It was featured on Time's list of 100 best English language novels from 1923 to 2005. This fiction or novel of V.S. Naipaul is autobiographical in nature because here the titular character, Mr. Biswas, it represents Naipaul's father, and Biswas' son, that is Anand, that's representing Naipaul himself. Then you can see that how this character struggles to claim self-determination and success, because success is calculated by maintaining a house of one's own. From birth, Biswas is marked with hardships, and then even the Pandit claims that he'll be unlucky to the parents and all. So Biswas inadvertently affects his father's death. Right from the beginning, you come to know that how Biswas is responsible for the death of his father, who drowns in the stream when he goes for searching for him, and then family dissolves thereafter. So after the death of his father, he tries to make his own way in the world, and then he falls into a marriage with a member in a vast Tulsi household. So this writer, Naipaul, he gives a detailed description of Tulsi's household, which represents older and communal way of life. So it's a house which has n number of people living in that, and then this family presents an opportunity for Biswas to settle and relatively comfortable. His lust for modern self-determination prevents him from being subordinated to the other household because he wants a house of his own. While he does end up achieving the goal of acquiring a house of his own, so you have the whole story that how he shifts from one job to another, from one place to another, and then there's a whole struggle of achieving this goal of having his own house. He goes into debt in order to give his family the luxury of only a very shabby house. In the end, you come to know that how Mr. Biswas is only able to own for himself a house which is a shabby one. He dies after a cardiac event on an ambiguous narrative note of optimism. You can see the end of this fiction with a note of optimism because he was able to get success in his lifelong quest of having his own house, and pessimism with a question in the air, what it has really added up to. So what exactly does this mean in the end? So the both things are there, the optimism as well as the pessimism. We are going to talk about this house for Mr. Biswas. We're going to talk in detail, and then we're going to do also the analysis part. But before that, let's look at the major themes, what you're going to see in this fiction. This fiction projects status of women. They are mostly treated in this fiction as caretakers, conspirators, or just faces in the crowd. They hardly have any kind of aspirations. The daughters of Tulsi household are married to men simply because of their caste. So the financial stability of the prospective groom is not considered, nor is any care given for the girl's age or consent. The only thing is that the caste, they should be married to their own caste. So they hardly consider the financial stability of the groom, or the girl's consent is not needed in that. You are able to see the widows who are already, you always worry about the future, and you also see that how women punish their kids and make themselves satisfied. Then in this fiction, you also see the aspiration. You see that how Mohan Biswas begins to dream simply of a home where he can keep his family without multiple other relations around. So he just have this aspiration that he should have his own home where he can keep only his family and not all the other relatives around, and without the constant jabbering of women or institution of the privacy of his children. So he doesn't want a lot of people around him. Then there is a theme of family where all the families depicted in the book are dysfunctional in varying degrees. The main example is of Tulsi family, which is a big family, and in which the daughters and their resident husbands are mostly treated as servants, and her two sons rule like kings. So somehow you are also able to see that how family as an institution works for them. You have the theme of housing, where you find that how Mr. Biswas is married to Shama, and so early in his life, and then his life is heavily impacted by the conditions in which he lives. As a contrarian, he desires private accommodation, while as a fairly impractical man, he often depends upon others in order to have an accommodation at all. So you see that on one place he just wants his own privacy, and on the other hand you find him depending upon the others for his accommodation. So housing is a major element in this. Then there is education. Mr. Biswas and the Tulsi family understand that along with the decline of the family structure and the economic changes in Trinidad, education not for themselves but for their children, is a key to independence and prosperity. So they know that how much education is important for them to be independent of certain things and to become prosper. So you have the example of his son Anand, who gets scholarship in England, and he just like who is the portrait of V.S. Naipaul himself, and he goes for his education to England for the independence and prosperity, future prosperity. Also in this fiction you have the element of distrust, because there is Mr. Biswas, who is always against this Tulsi family. He always is being duped by them, and though he is living under their roof, but there is always a point of distrust which is always there, and he doesn't have a substantial source of income for himself, and he does not have the residence of his own. So he knows that he depends upon the Tulsi family, but he does not have a trust towards them. So in some way that they have a certain strange hold on his life. You also have the element of secularism, where the story portrays religion in Trinidad, where Hindi or Christianity in dry, if not outright satirical. You see that how there is a prophecy that Mr. Biswas is going to bring a lot of misfortune for the family, and then you also see that how there are the pretentiousness of Mr. Tulsi's daughters, who is a westernized wife. So there's the character Dorothy, and he's the westernized wife of Shekhar, and is disdained by Mr. Tulsi's daughter for her pretentiousness. So both the religions, Hindi or Christianity, they are not outrightly satirized, but still they are presented in a very wry manner. So that was for today about the introduction and the themes in a very outline form we dealt with. And let's look at this fiction in detail in my other presentation, where we are going to analyze it, and we're going to also talk about certain areas that need to be looked upon. Thank you, students.